Hello, friends. Welcome to the Note Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg. I have a returning guest today. I love it when people come back. Emily Aborn. What did we talk about last time? Oh, it was networking or connections. Yes. And today we're going to talk about a simple content framework. And I love the idea of simple. I'm lazy or efficient, whichever way you want to look at it. And where would you like to start with this? I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me back. I love being back. I think like to your point, I love simple too, and I call it cozy. Like I'm just running a cozy business. I'm not trying to make things like extravagant or like stand in front of my Lamborghini throwing money around at the end of the year here. So I like to think of it as a cozy business that we're running. So as far as like a framework, so my concept behind this or like idea behind this is because I'm sure you feel this way too, and I do too, where it's like we've been in business a while. We know what we do very well. We know who we work with, but sometimes you really just are like, I don't know, what do I share at this point? Like, what do I even share anymore? Right. So, this is just kind of a way to keep you out of that and keep you going consistently with the things that you are sharing in your business, no matter how that looks, whether it's blogs or podcasts or newsletters, social media, whatever the case may be. So I don't love, like, I'm the person who's like, give me a framework and I'll probably break it. But this is not that. Like, you won't
That
want to
is
break it.
exactly
It's
where
so,
my brain went. I was like, I'm such a rebel. As soon as someone says
yes,
blueprint, framework, plan, or whatever, I'm like,
same.
how can I break it?
So this is like the only way I can really not break things for myself. And I want to say, with a caveat, grain of salt, whatever, take what works for you and leave the rest, because that's what this is all about. Like, this is about just like, I love taking pieces from podcasts. Like, my brain must be like an amalgamation at this point of all the different podcasts I've read, all the different books, right? Like all the courses, like it's all just kind of jumbled up in there and then spits out in the way that works for me. So just remember that as we're talking. Like, this isn't like black and white, do it this way or don't, or you fail. It's just a guidance.
Actually, a simple guide to me sounds so much more cozy than framework. But then again, I've talked about this on the show before. Some of us have word allergies to certain words.
Yeah,
So as soon
it's
as I
very
hear
true.
framework or blueprint, I'm immediately in my allergic zone. But if you say, like guide, oh, I like a guide. That feels cozy. So I think with anything, as you said, take it with a grain of salt, make it your own, test it, and don't take it as gospel or it's written in the stones from Moses. It's kind of like this, the thing that Emily's going to talk about is what worked for her. The thing that I talk about are the things that work for me. It's not to say this is the way, like Mandalorian style. It's to say
Yeah.
this is a way and to get your brain turning for what might be your way.
Perfect. Okay, I feel like we've laid a good foundation. So I'll share, like, a lot of people ask me about content planning, and I think they think that I'm sitting over here like with some immaculate content plan, and I have like every single social media post are planned out from here until kingdom come. That is not true. What I do is I establish like a high level plan. So like for the month of January, for example, I knew I wanted to focus on anti-bro marketing. So that's like my bucket. That's like my theme. And my themes will be different. Like sometimes they'll be real specific, like repurposing might be a theme I would touch on, or I will make it very broad, like creativity. Like that's very, very big. So I will choose a theme every single month, and then I will say, okay, how many big pieces do I have? Like, I have 4 emails this month, I have 4 podcasts this month, I have 4, I'm trying to think of what else I do. I think that's pretty much all the big stuff I do on a monthly basis. Blogs, if I had a blog I was doing. So I'll map out those according to the theme, and then from there, that's when like I think about like the granular social media posts. And that's where the framework comes in, because that's where we can get a little hung up. Like, we've created these big pieces, like a podcast
This
before we
is
were
this is
recording.
what I want to hear because
Yeah.
as this, you were about to say, sorry to interrupt you, but before we were recording, I was saying I'm really good at the podcast. I love the podcast, but then like the repurposing or turning it in. But then again, I did quit social media for 2024, so there wasn't a need for it. But now in 2025, I've started Facebook ads. I've decided to kind of nuance my way back in there because I'm sending people there. I want to have something there. But also to your point, just as people listening, for something to consider, if the idea of coming up with 12 monthly themes already makes you feel overwhelmed, just
Yeah.
pick one the next month. Because as you're saying this, and I loved your like no bro marketing or repurposing, I have one consistent theme every year. I only have 1 month thus far that I theme. I always do November because I'm the no coach.
I love that.
But there's other things that I could do, and and my question too, before we keep going into the framework itself, is do you repeat a theme? Like, because I always do November. That's just without saying because it works so well. But like, if people came up and they eventually had 12 themes, would you recommend that they follow through and do that again, or that it's all coming up with a new theme?
I'd say it totally is what works for you. So let's use like the example of like an ice cream shop versus a service provider. Okay. So an ice cream shop, they might actually have the same themes like every single year. You know what I mean? Like every year. Well, like I'm thinking of one I used to write content for. And in the summer, there was this thing called the ice cream trail, I think it was called. And you could go around our state, New Hampshire, and like go to all of these different ice cream shops. So all month long, all we did was talk
Love
about the ice
that. I
cream
would
trail.
so
Yeah.
do that.
And that happened every single July. Like we always talk about the ice cream trail. They would then focus on like holiday flavors around the holidays, right? So it's always going to be the same for them. With a service provider, you might find, and this totally depends on your business, and it could apply to products too, but you might find that like maybe there's a service like right now, one of my favorite services to offer is this like little podcaster bundle, and it's like the written pieces of your podcast and a couple other little perks. So like that's going to probably play into my next month's theme because I want to talk about those bundles. So I'm like, how can I make my theme work for what I also want to be offering and promoting at this time? So you can see
That's
how
such
like
an excellent point. So, and also
right.
it'll be business by business. Like, and I'm thinking, when there's food or whatever, there is there's Thanksgiving, there's Halloween, there's Christmas or whatever. But you could have that in your service business too. You could be like, get set up for the summer, or I don't know, like, but once again, you get to play with this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So when I say themes, I don't want people to think like, oh, I have to find the 12 pillars of my business. And I would also say I don't do them for the whole year up front. I pick 3 at a time because I like to actually know what I'm doing for the next 3 months. But that's it. I don't fill in any more than 1 month at a time because that's just
Oh, I love that.
I
And
like
also,
to
I
I
don't know
like
who I'll be 3 months from now, let alone a year.
yeah. Yeah. And like the way I see it is I love being ahead on my podcast, but I also like to make sure that I'm like having those like touches with my content. I don't want to be so distant from it that I like have no idea what I said. I'm like, oh, I
I've
forgot I was
had
sharing
that
that this week.
happen. One time I pre-recorded all this stuff and I was so excited because I don't normally batch. I'm more fly by the seat of my pants. But then people were responding or whatever, and I was like, oh God, I have to go and listen to what I said again because I have no idea what they're talking about.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So we've got our big content pieces. Let's just say you're focusing on a podcast because I think that's something you and I have in common.
Yep.
So I would then break that down. Like I'll just say, okay, how can I find 4 posts from this podcast alone? And like that's a lot. I mean, honestly, you could do 3 and call it a week, but let's just say you go for 4.
Sorry,
So
just to interrupt. 4 posts from each episode?
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's
No,
it's
it makes
easier
sense.
it's easier for me a little bit because with a solo show, I kind of have like built-in chapters, right? Or like built-in pieces. But you can do it with a guest show. You just have to like you're going to want to tie it back to what you offer. So here's the like breakdown. I'll use a garden analogy. Again, this is just a reference, but I like to start with like the soil. So the soil's like the foundation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I talking about? Who is this for? What are we covering? Like, it's basically your show notes if you want to look at it if you want to like use a podcast. If you're talking
100%.
about your business as a whole, it'd be like the services you offer, the people you offer it to, your baseline. Like this is just all the who, what, when, where, how. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you do want those posts because I know as much as we like to think, like not everybody knows who you are and what you do. And even in your podcast itself, it's good to remind people like I introduce myself every single week. I'm like, in case you fast forwarded it over the intro last time, or you just, you're new here, here's who I am and what I do. Like, that's my foundation. So I call that the soil, right? So we have to like have nice, healthy soil. Then you will water it. So the water is like the education, like what bits of this podcast can you pull out that's like an educational tidbit or tip, or for some people this is going to be hacks, right? But I don't want to use those words. I mean, it's a hack. But like, what is the educational piece that I'm watering my audience with in that piece of content? And then what are the sunshine elements? So for me, a lot of it is like I'll tell a personal story, or my dog will interrupt the conversation, or these are like the pieces of your personality that you're putting onto your social media or in your podcast. Like, these are the parts of you that you share. Some people, this is going to look like those real funny memes, like, which I am so obsessed with and like haven't had the courage to do yet, but love them. And then for other people, that might look like the inspirational quotes or like the feel good stuff, right? So that's all the personality. If you want to think of it this way, it's kind of like the fluff, right? It's just like the filler, but it's important to build connection and have that piece in there. And then there's the wind, and this is like where we guide people, we push people, not push, but invite them to our products and our services and to work with us and to learn more, take the next step. So you can think of it like the wind blows seeds into other gardens and more pretty flowers pop up everywhere, and it's all
That's
just
like
happy sunshine.
germination. I love
Yeah.
that. And, that's how cross-pollination, whatever you want to call it, that's such a great example. Because at the end of the day, there are some podcasts that are purely entertainment, and then they make their money by sponsorship, or they make their money by ads or whatever. But we're talking service providers here. So we're doing this thing because we have a service. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes people forget that. Like, it's kind of like, because you get so caught up in all these other things. But I love how you've got this analogy. Each of these things has a role. And I love, the wind guiding, or, encouraging, sending people along to what is next. Like, you've had
Yeah.
this piece of information, you've had this insight, you've had this aha. Now, next steps are this. And it's an invitation. It's not like, and now if you don't work with me forever, your life will be doomed. No.
Yeah, I always say I'm not ever trying to sell anybody anything. I'm just like, here's what you need, and here's what I have, and here's how much it costs. And if we don't work together, that's okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I love this just because it keeps it really, really simple, and it keeps you from having to like spin your wheels. And let's talk about the counter. So, when you see somebody on Instagram or social media and like all they ever do is sell you stuff, like all they're ever doing is promoting themselves, or they're only ever sharing pictures of their dog. And you're like, great. What do they do? I have no idea. They're always just like summiting some mountain or in the backwoods. You're like, I don't know what they actually do, but their pictures of nature are nice. Or you get somebody who's always sharing memes and personality, and you're just like, I'm super confused. So you have to think of it. Or another one is somebody who's always sharing educational tips and like helpful, useful content. You're like, okay, great. It's actually a little bit overwhelming. So when you have a healthy mix like this, it helps your content to be diverse, and it helps you to like reach people in a different way, like kind of wherever they're at with your content.
And it's going to appeal to different people. Like, some people, they're only ever going to be there for the memes. Like, there is one
Yeah.
page that I follow because they have the best memes. I'm not actually interested in their business. I wouldn't poo-poo it or whatever, but it's like, I'm not even in your clientele niche, whatever. But man, you're funny. And then you think about it, everybody who participates in your content has a role in this germination or win type thing, because when they do really funny memes, I will share them, which someone else
Mm-hmm.
may see who is a fit or a client or whatever. Like, sometimes the people who are my biggest referral source, who send the most actual business my way, have never spent a cent with me and probably never will. But, they have a part in this ecosystem, your gardening analogy. And there are some people who are just interested in the educational stuff. They're like, for whatever reason, they don't like memes, or maybe they just don't get your sense of humor or whatever. And there's some people who are here for all of it. But I love your point at having the variety so that, yes, this person says funny memes. Yes, this person scales mountains or goes to amazing locales, but they also are a copywriter or a coach or a web designer. Like so I could identify what it is that they do. Because I think sometimes too, with the educational piece, I know I've done this when I was early in business. I was so good at talking about what it is a coach could do or whatever. And then people
Yeah.
would literally message me and go, I love all your stuff. I've hired a coach. And I'd be like, excuse me? Because the thing is, there's a difference between being product aware, coaching is a great service, but being you aware as in, and you're a coach. And that was the missing piece in my business
Yeah.
for about 2 years.
And the other, like, so, that is such a good example of how we can really misstep on that. Like, I can never assume that people know what I do. Like, that's the other thing. You just never can assume that people know what you do. Even if you've been saying it again and again and again, there is still somebody out there who's like, I have no idea. I still have no idea. So never, you don't have to. I like this because it doesn't make you feel like you're repeating yourself all the time. You're just bringing everything together really, really cohesively. And you're also not putting all of your weight. How many times have we done this? We like post something, we're like, that didn't work. Like you put all of your weight into this one post, and it's just like, no, like it's a body of work we're creating.
I think that's such a great example too, a body of work, because you can be putting a lot of pressure on one piece of content to perform. And I've seen this, I don't know how many times with colleagues, friends, a couple of times with clients. Polish, perfect, polish, perfect, polish, perfect, then hit publish. And then like, well, nobody liked it or clicked it or whatever. Whereas if
Exactly.
you put out lots of stuff, and then, as you said, you've got a body of work, the algorithm is more likely to show it because you're active on the platform. People are more likely to come across it. Like if you've just written one thing, like I think part of the reason my business was successful is I built it as I went and I shared as I went along the way all of the stuff. Whereas sometimes people are like in their secret lab writing their book or whatever. Here's my book, well, but nobody knows who you are and nobody cares because you
Yeah.
haven't spent time engaging in audience building. The same as the people you spoke about. One of my absolute pet peeves is the people who only show up when they're selling something. Like, here's my latest and greatest thing, and then I don't hear from them for 6 months.
I
It's
had someone on a strategy session today. She's like, okay, I just have to get all my sales stuff ready and then I can start sharing on LinkedIn. And I was like, maybe also start sharing other things on LinkedIn too before you just start selling them all.
but also too, I suppose I think it depends on your business model or whatever. Like, maybe that does work for some people. I remember someone saying to me once, because they were a friend, and I said, like, why do you only ever post when you're selling? Like, your stuff's amazing, you're great, I love reading it, but you only ever post when you're selling a course. And her frame of reference, I've never heard anyone else say this before, and it works for her. She's like, if I was in a movie, like I was an actor or actress or however you refer to it now, and then, like, say Wicked or Barbie or any of the big movies that came out recently, the actors do a tour. So they go around the world or they go on the podcast and they go on this and they promoting the movie. So she's like, so I only promote when I have my equivalent of the movie. And now I'm telling everybody about it and giving tidbits. And then I go and rest and recover and then I make my next movie. And I thought that's an interesting way of looking about it. And obviously it works for her. But for me, it was kind of like the no like trust part is in like, I feel that you're only interested in me when you want me to give you money. That's how it comes
Yeah.
across to me. But I could see her movie analogy and how it works for her.
Yeah, yeah, I could see how that works for her. And I'm with you. I need like a little bit of a warm up. I don't like being sold to or feeling like I'm sold to, but if you can do it sneakily, then I obviously am a sucker for it, just like anybody else.
Yeah, well, I
Not
suppose.
not sneak when I say sneakily, I don't mean shisty. I mean, if I have the no leg and trust, it doesn't feel like I'm being sold to. It feels like I'm just choosing
Yeah,
something.
I like to like. I Nobody likes to be sold to. Well, I don't think so. Not many people like to be sold to, but everybody likes to buy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, and here are the things. But when I'm selling sellings, if I run a training, webinar, masterclass, freebie, something like that, I personally will go, the masterclass section is over, the training is over. If you feel complete, thanks for coming. See you next time. If you want to stay for the shopping experience, I do a really deliberate shift into, and it's funny how people say nobody ever actually invites. They just kind of like, I've given you value. Now you're assumed to stay here and listen. And if you're not even
Yeah.
interested, then feel free to go. I don't mind. As I said,
Yeah.
there's people I follow who I love their stuff, will share it. But for whatever reason, I'm not a fit or I'm not in the target market. Like there's web designers and stuff, people I love. I already have a person who I work with and love, so I'm not likely to change. Doesn't mean I can't appreciate your stuff and share it up, and maybe I'll help you find someone who is a fit for you.
Yeah. I love that.
So with this, okay, back to the simple content framework. So I love how you like a month. A month is enough that you can spend some time planning, but not overwhelming. Like some people have their year or their 5-year plan. I'm like, 5 years? I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. But a month, I can get behind a month. And then you pick your big pillars, or pieces, whether they're 4 podcasts if you do a weekly podcast, 4 blogs if you do a weekly blog. I guess my question would be, if somebody is looking to transition, they're like, okay, I've podcasted for however long, it's feeling stale, I want to change to blogs or I want to change to whatever. Have you got any advice for how they would like shift their big piece?
Yeah. So, like, a podcast is let's go podcast to blog or blog to podcast. You can turn almost any blog into a podcast. You can turn almost any podcast into a blog. You can turn that presentation you just did for the community organization into a podcast or a blog. So I am a big fan of like not reinventing the wheel, repurposing whenever you possibly can, which I want to be clear, repurposing is not always as easy as like just cut and paste. Like sometimes you have to change things to be relevant, to fit the format that you're putting it into. So I'll give you an example. I used to have a podcast where I would have guests on my show. It was called She Built This. And I was looking at the topics recently and I'm like, oh, that was a really good episode I did with so and so. But now that's my area of expertise. So I'm going to repurpose that interview, not her words, but I'm going to repurpose those
Yes.
exact same questions I asked her, ask them to myself, and create a podcast from that. So, like, I'm going to take my own questions and, like, not actually interview myself, but I'm going to use them as a starting point for my piece of content. So, like, I'm going to give you one more example. I used to own a mattress store. This was like a long
I
time
remember
ago.
you talking about that
Yeah.
last time. Yes.
Yeah. I used to own a mattress store, and I kid you not, the content I created for that mattress store, I can sometimes still repurpose to this day for my current business. So, like, don't write anything off. Like, one of my big goals this year is to just stop with the over creating, over generating like new stuff and see what I already have and like bring it back to life, because some of it's really, really good and you don't get the eyeballs you wanted on it the first time. So bring it back in a different way, give it to people in a smaller format, larger format, like do what works for you. But it's a really good way to get more eyeballs.
That's such an excellent point. So imagine like if you did a newsletter, because I do email marketing. Sometimes I write something and I get lots of responses to it. And I'm like, that was good. I
Yeah.
don't do a blog at this stage. It's in the back of my mind. But anyway, all this to say, however many people you had in your audience when you wrote that is the grand total of who's seen that. So, repurposing that, turning it into another email. Like for me, for this year, a lot of my content similar is repurposing, retargeting, giving new life to, looking back through, like that example isn't relevant to what I'm doing now or has shifted, but the core of this piece can be redone, and it's so much faster than making a whole new thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when I've done that, how many people who were on my list the first time then respond. That people forget. I think sometimes people are scared to repurpose because like, oh, I don't want to be repetitive, or people have heard all this before. But
Yeah.
sometimes there are gaping holes in our stuff because we know it and it's so familiar to us. Not everybody reads everything. Not everybody remembers everything that they read. And if it's good, even if they've heard it before, like I can think of quotes that I say all the time, and then I hear them again and I'm like, but it's still relevant, or something new comes to tie to that. So I love your point about like giving old stuff new life.
And I also think we're not always in the right place the first time that we read or saw something. Like I'm rereading a whole book right now called The Artist's Way for writers. And sometimes I'll read something, I'm like, wait, did I read that the first time? Because that is powerful, right? So sometimes you're just simply in a completely different place. And when something comes across your desk or your ears for the second or third time, you're like, oh, that is doing something different. That is landing
That
now.
is such a great point. It's like when you rewatch a movie or a TV show, or there's some of your comfort TV shows. Like my daughter and I are absolute Hamilton fans, and we've seen the stage show 3 times. The first time we were right at the back in like the gods or like the nosebleed seats. The second time we were in the stall, the dress circle, and the last time we saw it, we were in stalls, like we're in second row. And my daughter's like, next time I'm going to be on stage. But every time it's the same show, but there's
Yeah.
different things that you pick up on that for whatever reason you didn't pick up on before. New angle, new perspective, new stuff that's happening for you. And then there's some comfort in the familiar. So I love that point too. They may have read it before and it landed totally differently. Since becoming a parent, some of the movies that I watched or enjoyed as a child and I'm watching now, and I'm like, I can see why the parent, like when I was a kid, I was like, that parent's horrible. And now I'm an adult, I'm like, yeah, I would have made that exact same call.
I just rewatched like one of my favorite movies when I was a kid was Aladdin, and I just rewatched it as an adult, and I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, what? They put so many little tiny pieces of humor in there for adults. You know what I mean? That I never got when I was a kid. So
Easter eggs.
yes,
Shrek's another one. Have you watched
yeah,
Shrek again as an
yes,
adult?
this is a good analogy because you, in your case of Hamilton, you were literally sitting in a different place at a different time. And therefore, it was like, it'd be like listening to a podcast versus listening to a blog, right? So you're like receiving it in a different way. But even if that's not the case, even if it is the same medium, you may have aged, you may have gone through personal growth, you may have had transformation, you may be a parent now. So I really love that analogy. I think it just like is so on the nose.
Also, too, you stage your business. You might be listening to this. You might have listened to this the first time through and been like, oh, actually, I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing or whatever, or I'm not yet ready, whatever it is. And now you're at a time of change and the thing is relevant. Like there's some podcasts I listen to and I just listen to all of them and they're talking about something that I'm like, oh yeah, like to this day, I don't know. It may change, but I don't think I'm ever going to do TikTok.
Same.
But if
Well, it's
that
going to go away soon
changes,
anyway.
but if that ever changed and I re-listened to something, then you've got fresh eyes or ears because it's like, oh, this is relevant to me now. Like when my kids were little, I was listening to parenting things and people talking about homework. My kids weren't yet at school. That wasn't an issue. So I
Right.
think, as you said, your stages and changes and your perspective shifts as well and your focus. So you've given people a lot to think about, Emily. Just a reminder for people who didn't catch your last episode, can you let the listeners know what it is you do and where they can find you?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that opportunity. And this was a lot of fun. So I'm a small business copywriter, and I'd say the best way to connect with me in whatever way you like to consume content is emilyaborn.com, and you can find all of the places.
And what's the name of your show? Like you've got a podcast, let everybody
Oh,
know.
yes. My podcast is called Content with Character, and hopefully Suzanne will be a guest on there interviewing me someday soon.
That will be fun. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for joining me again. If you've got any questions, send them through to me. I'll pass them on to Emily or find Emily yourself. But I think, sometimes it's just kind of like, when someone asks me a question, I actually love it because then I can create another piece of content to answer the question. So questions are highly
Exactly.
encouraged. Thank you for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening. Bye for now.